ROSiE is a project that began 1.5 years ago, more or less. We are at the middle of its timeline. Its full title is Responsible Open Science in Europe. So we are not only concerned with open science, but we are taking into the approach also of responsible open science, and how this responsibility is seen by researchers, by policymakers, by other stakeholders in research. So in order to fulfill this task, we have a consortium of 13 entities that is spread all over Europe. So I will briefly describe the main objectives and the approach that ROSiE is applying right now in order to fulfill its contractual obligations to the European Commission, but also to fulfill its obligation to the European researchers and researchers perhaps that are beyond the borders of our continent. So its main aim is to develop practical tools to ensure research ethics, research integrity in open science and citizen science. It has 4 pillars or 4 main streams of work. The first is to explore, and namely to create a corpus of knowledge, and that will use it as a stepping stone for creating its guidelines and its platform closer to the end of this project. So it already has finished a big proportion of this work with regard to research ethics, research integrity, as well as social and legal implications and challenges of open science. It will also apply a quite large and structured engagement strategy that will engage not only stakeholders that will be invited to participate in different workshops, but also it has more permanent, if I may say, structures of engaging with stakeholders as open science and research integrity and research ethics experts, and also stakeholders that participate in their capacity as representatives of different European funded projects. Another stream of work that is mainly concerned with the outputs and of course with the outcomes of ROSiE project is to create operational guidelines and supplements to the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity, that with guidelines that of course are related to open science. This is the guide stream of work, and the equip following, let's say, the tendency to platformize these kind of knowledge. We are going to build the so-called knowledge hub, where we have the ambition to create a user-friendly platform. You will have some glimpses of it at the end of my presentation, that will be user-friendly and will streamline the knowledge that will have been gathered and part of it created during the ROSiE project. So all of these 4 streams of work are not, of course, acting separately from each other, but they interact, and they interact quite actively during the whole duration of the project. So I would like to present some of the outputs that have created, and they mainly have to do with the first 2 streams of work. So by analyzing different European Union national codes of conduct on research integrity, we have come to some conclusions that are giving us a help and guide us on how to create our guidelines. First, the partners that have been involved in this work have realized that there is quite some confusion surrounding the responsible research and how responsible research is, let's say, defined. And this is the reason for that is that responsible research that has to be translated into responsible open science is spread across areas of research ethics, research integrity, of course, open science, responsible research and innovation, and science communication. So this knowledge and these kind of definitions are spread out in a lot of guiding documents, opinion papers. So someone will have to try to make a resume of all these different definitions that are out there. And because of the fact that these areas are usually treated independently, according to one of the mapping exercises that we have concluded, this task is quite a formidable task if someone would like to close down to a specific definition of what responsibility and responsible researcher and responsible open science is. And we have to say that according to this mapping, the Austrian and French codes in these issues have been treated within the same document. So it is more easy to follow in this respect in our case. So with our engagement with the one more permanent basis of interaction with our stakeholder group, you can see some of the people that are also featured in our website. You can see the link here. We have come to some recommendations that have that was the result of our interaction with these experts. So it would be nice to that a guideline that will target responsible open science should clearly delineate the scope. So someone, a researcher, someone who is not an expert in open science, and that happens most of the times, these kind of guidelines should clarify which aspects relating to ethics and integrity are covered by the guideline and which are not. And this has to do, and this was a recurrent, let's say, request or demand from our stakeholders, that these kind of guidelines should be practical, useful, and operational. So for that to come into being, policymakers or the European Commission or any other body should consult the researchers on which way to express this kind of guideline. And one other, let's say, response was, it would be nice if these kind of guidelines could be differentiated along parameters like disciplines or types of data. At the beginning, we were more focused on, let's say, making differentiation with regard to disciplines, but perhaps a more effective way would be just to focus on the types of data that should differentiate this kind of guidelines, and not necessarily to disciplines. Perhaps it should be done both ways. And of course, to help researchers, this is one other practical concern, to balance between open science and data protection, how they could be optimally apply GDPR and things that are usually slowing down research or create concerns if someone is following the right path or not. With regard to recommendations on policy advice, despite the fact that as we will see, Europe actually tries to create at the national level and at the level of the Commission guidelines on open science, we should follow aligned action at the European, national, and institutional level, because at that time we have something like a polyphony of different guidelines that do not match up in some cases, or they are, as we will see, in a different level of development. One other important, let's say, request was that there is a need of adequately qualified educators for open science. This is also a request for research integrity. But in the case of open science, and taking into account the requests of national bodies and, of course, demands from the European Commission for those who are working in these large consortia that involve many countries, this is something that would help greatly researchers. Also, our stakeholders were not so keen of following a legalistic path. More an incentive-driven approach would motivate researchers to endorse in open science. And of course, there were some papers that were also published these last weeks with regard to the cardinal role of research funding organizations that have in promoting and fostering open science. So in addition, because I mentioned that we have two permanent bodies of engagement, the other is the so-called CrossOff stakeholder forum that meets every more or less 2 months, and it integrates representatives of different projects. This kind of projects bring upon the perspectives of research ethics, of research integrity, and of ethical issues that have to do, and open science issues that have to do with specific technologies like the organoid technology and other technologies that are at the forefront of innovation right now in Europe. So continuing a little bit with our outputs, our colleagues from Austria have created a map of Europe with regard to the public policies that are in place in different countries that belong to the European Union. In this map, we see with red color the countries that they have at least one national open science, open access public policy, while in the case of the dark blue countries are the ones that do not have a national framework for this. In order to have a more nuanced view of what happens in these countries, we have created what we call the national country cards, where someone can see, we see just the examples of Greece, France, and Austria, what frameworks, what things with regard to open science are active right now in each of these countries. One other, and we think one of the most important outputs of ROSiE project is the development of training materials for open science. According to it is of course a work in progress, and things that I show here are not written in stone, but according to our approach right now, we believe that these training materials will be structured according with regard to disciplines, to different disciplines, and having a different material for research performing organizations, universities, or research centers, and a more differentiated material for citizen scientists. There are going to be material for trainees, handouts and readings. We have already a collection of case studies that bring a more hands-on, let's say, experience on some issues, some experience that have been created from experience and have to do, of course, with open science. And here I have one example of the training modules that exist in all these different material. Until now, we have material for social, natural sciences, humanities, and health sciences. The material for citizen sciences are in the making right now. And we have we see here the training modules for natural sciences. We have used this approach on breaking down these materials in different training modules, in order for someone to be able to have some flexibility according to the time that he can devote to this kind of training, and to taking some elements, some building blocks from these modules. Right now, we are at the process of pilot testing these training modules. If you go to the ROSiE website, you can also see an open call for interested places, universities, or individuals who would like to participate in this pilot testing of training materials, and of course send feedback to the partners that are optimizing training materials. So, closing the presentation of the outputs, this is a very early view of what the Knowledge Hub, the ROSiE platform for open science, is going to be structured. It is not going to be exactly the way that you see it right now. It is just something like a mock-up. But what we would like to bring to the end users is a platform that can funnel, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the knowledge that will have been gathered from the first 2 or 2.5 years of ROSiE project. We want someone to have a view of what is there. For example, what kind of thematic categories, research integrity, ethics, social science, social challenges, legal challenges of open science, and to be able to have with just one view the methodology that was followed in order for this kind of information to have found a place in the Knowledge Hub. This will be, as we say, the level 1, the entrance of the Knowledge Hub. The second level will be the information that will have been gathered and will have found a place in our deliverables, but not, of course, in the form of the deliverables, which are usually there are hundreds of pages, they're a bit cumbersome and not so user-friendly. What we have begun to do with the existing deliverables is to, we have an exercise of deassembling the information that is at the deliverables and creating different building blocks of information that can be easily found afterwards through a search function. So we're going to create a strategy of tagging this kind of information, so someone can ideally can put these different pieces from different sections of the Knowledge Hub and create her own or his own portfolio of useful pieces of information that help her or his work. I don't know if we have much time left. I would like just to mention some things have been already described in my presentation. We have a list of implementation challenges that have been brought by the engagement with our stakeholders. First, we had, again, a persistent, let's say, persistent concerns with regard to how open science could be applied. Someone could not have something that fits for every country, for each discipline, for countries with which are not, let's say, economically developed. We do not have to go outside Europe to see this kind of disparity of non-harmonization between the needs with regard to open science. We can also see it in Europe. Also, there was again a request to the GDPR related provisions should be made more clear. We see that there in some cases researchers have to go back to lawyers or to experts in GDPR to ask to seek their advice while they are making their research. This is something that is slowing down research, and this is something that until now it is more or less suboptimal. And of course, maybe not so relevant for social sciences and humanities, more relevant to natural sciences and biomedical research, that IPR and patenting create barriers to open science. So this thing has to be considered when someone is being engaged in privately funded and industrial research. So this gaps in national policies have been highlighted by the mapping exercise that I presented, and through these country cards. And it is good, of course, that the open science has been treated in one level or another in different countries. However, we see quite a lot of non-harmonization across Europe. There are, of course, instances that we can follow what the European Commission demands or has put in guidelines, especially for those who are involved in projects that are funded by Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. However, a researcher carries with her the individual context that he has brought up, and he works when working with research projects that are funded by national funding organizations. So this is why at the beginning I also presented something that we need to have a coordination for open science policies. And some recommendations, these are these 4 recommendations that have been brought up again through our engagement processes, that it would be very nice if there could be an integration of open science into curricula in universities. Also, which is of course a no-brainer, to provide sufficient funding for opening up research, especially in countries that are not economically developed. Open science is an expensive thing. So some countries need more help than others, also in the European context. And allow research participants to control over the information that should be released. And the last one, that open science policy should consider that transitions are likely to follow uneven trajectories. So in this sense, be ready to have this non-harmonization for the years to come, but at least to have a view and agree on some basic things. This was very quickly some first, not preliminary, but first early results of ROSiE projects. You can find quite more information in our website, and keep track of the progress through our social media channels. So this was from my side. Thank you very much.